for now. My guest is Nikki Bush. She's creative parenting expert, inspirational speaker, and best-selling author. And we're talking about this idea of parenting. You will have grown up, or most of us will have grown up with the idea that parenting is the highest honor that any of us can have. And it's emerging that people are beginning to look at the practicalities of parenting and saying, wait a second, perhaps this might not be the way to go. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It's a great pleasure, Aubrey.
So what are we hearing out there? It looks like people are reconsidering the idea of parenting, and what is the reason for that?
Aubrey, I think that's an interesting question because maybe it's a good thing. I think in years gone by, people have just become parents because maybe everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
There's a notion that children complete you as a person, and possibly that children might make you happy.
And do they make people happy, the kiddies?
Well, I think it depends how you view it and what your personal experience is. For some people, it's the cherry on the top in their lives. For other people, it is a major, major stress that they hadn't anticipated. Because parenting today, particularly in the 21st century, is a fairly challenging time to be a parent.
And do you think that has to do with the economics of the time, or it has to do with the changing value systems of people in our culture, or has it got to do with the fact that we've been served a lie here, that children are somehow these completers of our existence here on Mother Earth?
I think it's a bit of each of those things. I think today people are reconsidering because of financial issues. Children are expensive. They really are expensive. And then we need to look at how socioeconomic factors are changing. And I can tell you that in the past 8 to 10 years, I have noticed that my audiences have changed quite dramatically. Where I previously had 70 to 80% non-working mothers in my audiences,
yeah,
I now have 80% working mothers, possibly even 90% in the room.
So what does that mean for our future, Nikki, in terms of the future of the human race? If parenting is no longer such a great novelty, so it's no longer something that people look forward to, precisely because of those reasons that you've mentioned, the economics, the value systems, and all of those kinds of things, what does that mean for the future of the human race? Are we going to see the human race sort of deplete and die off?
Well, the interesting thing, Aubrey, is that we are seeing declining population growth throughout the world, and that's to do with a number of different factors. But the large percentage in the Western culture, in the Western world, large percentage of the populations are now old and aging. We're seeing aging populations, and their birth rates are on the decline. In Africa, we're still the opposite way.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to suffer from this for some time. But there is also the connection between education and declining birth rates.
011-883-0702 or 021-446-0567. My guest is Nikki Bush. We're talking parenting. Have you been under pressure since you've been an adult to have children? If you don't have children, if you do have children, are you the person that is still talking and cooing and talking about what a blessing your children have been? Or are you beginning to talk the language that we're beginning to hear, that children perhaps aren't the blessing that they are made out to be? I'd love to take your calls on that. Nikki, just another question from me. When people talk about children being this wonderful blessing and so forth, is it because they truly believe that, or is it that they have been conditioned by society, religious value systems and so forth to speak that language even in their own heads until they believe it, or is it a real reality?
Aubrey, I think from my personal point of view, I would say that parenting for me, and I think this is where people come unstuck when they become parents.
Yeah.
Parenting for me is actually part of my very personal development adventure.
Yeah.
It is the most remarkable
for you
development.
as a parent?
For me.
Okay.
For me as an individual.
Nice. Okay.
For me as an individual.
Yeah.
It is the most incredible personal development adventure that I have ever been given. Because children can see you 360 degrees. They can see parts of you you've never seen before. They will discover parts of you that you have never discovered before and would perhaps not discover had you not become a parent. And so for me, if you can reframe parenting as more about you than about your children, then it gives you a reason to do it really well, because this is as much about you as it is about your kids.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Nikki, because I've just received a tweet now from Mabatu in Toronto, in Canada. She says it's unfair to bring children into this world and giving them job to make us as adults happy. Are you finding that that is a big reason why people have children, that it has little to do with the children themselves, but rather about the parents themselves and how their self-esteem, their societal esteem is viewed?
I think that's a good point, because if you know that regular refrain, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I have the car. I'll be happy when I have the husband. I'll be happy when I have the child. I'll be happy when I have a new job. If that's why you're having a child, I really think you need to think twice. I always say to people who are considering having a baby that you need to understand that a baby is going to change your life irrevocably forever. If you don't want personal change and personal growth and development, not that you can't get personal growth and development without children, of course you can, but if you don't want change, do not have a baby.
Let's take some calls, Nikki. I'd love to take your calls around the idea that children are being brought into the world by parents, not necessarily because the children themselves are at the uppermost part of our thinking, but rather because they are about the edification of us as parents. I'd love to take your calls on that. And what does that then mean for those children? And are many parents beginning to discover that that actually was the reason why they brought these children in the world, and that is probably why they don't want to be parents anymore?